And the topic of today's module is navigating time management and moments of pause. My name is Sarah Sjostrom. I'm the Associate Chief Nursing Officer at Heber Rehabilitation Center, and I'll be reviewing today's module with you. So we all know time is of the essence. It is a critical factor. And I love this cartoon one of my colleagues shared with me, and I think it so incorporates everything that we think about on a daily basis as it pertains to time, and our team members sometimes saying, I don't have time for that, right? Sometimes we're too busy to even take care of ourselves or do things for ourselves that will, in the long run, save us time or make our lives easier. So I think that's a very important thing for us to consider and a very important sentiment to build on as leaders so that we can begin to address this perception on our teams. Teams often perceive that they don't have the time to do things that are essential because taking on additional tasks feels overwhelming, or they're perceiving these tasks as additional rather than part of their workflow. It can often feel overwhelming to take a pause in the day, yet that is so critical. And it's often those team members who are stressed and who are most in need of a break that really don't give themselves a break or don't feel that they have the time. So it really relies on the leader and the organization to model the behavior and to support the importance of taking a break and time management and creating a culture where it's okay to do just that. So why does it become so vital that on teams where we have so much going on, especially throughout the pandemic, where there's so much change and so much to do, what is the value of a pause? Why is it so critical, not only for us as leaders to take pause and to model pauses in our day, but to encourage our teammates to do just that as well? And this visual gives the know why of that. We see two individuals, or maybe the same individual, taking a different approach to their day. The first in the red is an individual who started at a fairly low anxiety level on the scale, and over the course of the day was exposed to various stresses, various stressful situations, did not take pause, did not take a break, did not intervene in any way, and slowly but surely their anxiety levels rose throughout the day to overwhelm them. This is the sensitized and vulnerable individual that we talked about in the orientation module that really leaves themselves exposed and potentially moving along that stress continuum to become stress injured or ill because of stress. In the blue is a different approach to the exact same day and the exact same stressors. And you can see that this individual has strategically placed pauses and breaks throughout their day so that they're better able to control and moderate the experience of stress by taking those breaks. By the end of the day, this individual may be a little bit higher on the anxiety scale than they started, but this is the true nature of resilience. They've been able to moderate and adapt throughout the day so that they're better able to cope and better able to navigate through that experience without significant harm. Pauses and breaks are valuable, but what do they look like? And how much time will this actually take? Because time is of the essence. Taking a pause and physiological grounding is simply taking a break and allowing yourself to stop the noise and connect with the present moment. And that may sound a little bit hokey, but there are various ways to do this that can be different for each person. Important to recognize too that even though we're talking about taking a break when we don't have a ton of time, you don't need a lot of time. These breaks can be as short as 90 seconds or a few minutes. Our brains are programmed to respond to small inputs of information. So small pauses can have very big impact on our ability to self-regulate and our ability to remain calm and better pattern our stress. And like I said, these can take on multiple forms. Some people do respond to internal focus and can hear someone say, take a deep breath, and that connects to them. Other people will need to take on external focus activities. And still other people are very physical in nature and may need something that will allow them to take a pause using somatosensory or sensory experiences. This will look different for everyone. Again, taking a pause and grounding during stressful times is critical for being able to pattern and mediate stress and build resilience and make the experience of stress less overwhelming for individuals on our teams. And again, the strategies that we take to have that moment of pause are going to look different for all of our teammates. So it's important for leaders to understand that giving someone a moment of pause is going to look different for each individual. Some people truly respond to internal focus activities and can sit with you and take a deep breath. Other people may need something that focuses on what's around them. And can be so simple as simply getting someone to stop, look at the world around them, the room around them, and name some of the items that they see in their surroundings. While this is simple and not time consuming, it can help divert someone's attention from a really stressful environment or a stressful process and redirect to something that does not elicit the same stress response and give them that pause that they need. And finally, there are other somatosensory experiences, and some people really respond to doing something physical that is patterned and rhythmic and allows them to take a break, like walking, swimming, listening to rhythmic music. Those can all be very soothing for individuals. So it's important to just help your teammates to find what type of pause works for them. In the most simple terms, a leader's role in time management in stressful times or in normal times can be boiled down to a couple of important categories. And the first being how to create time for your teams, or how to create the perception of time. Because unfortunately, while we can't give the teams a 25th hour in their day, we can help them to manage their time better so it feels as if there's more time. And this can start with just eliminating tasks that are unnecessary, helping coach your teams through an understanding of what are we doing that's wasting our time, what processes in our workflow are redundant, what can we just get rid of altogether. Determine priorities. Help your team work through and triage what's important, what do we need to get done first, and what is okay to leave for another day. Give permission to defer things so that your teams do not get overwhelmed by the to-do list. And then help your teams and guide them to give them the autonomy to start making these decisions on their own without you so that they feel capable and competent to navigate the time management of their own day. The second bucket is how can we give time for those essential and critical moments of pause and breaks. And it starts again with the leader as being the role model and modeling that self-care and modeling moments of pause. Physically giving your teams the encouragement that they need to take breaks, and maybe even providing the direction in the day that makes those mandatory, that says we are going to build into our workday mandatory moments of pause. And support the team so that that's possible, maybe by even physically being present and saying, I'm going to take your place so that you can take your break. These two things are critical in giving your teams the perception that they have more time and that they can navigate time and that they have permission to take those necessary and essential pauses. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we look forward to seeing you in module number 5.
Just a couple of notes as a follow-up to the video. How many times have you either heard or said yourself, I just need a minute? And you have to take a breath, you have to step away from the situation. Just think if you tried to structure that in your day, where I'm just gonna take a minute and recollect my thoughts and then go back out. It may help your stress level throughout the day, opposed to getting to that highest stress point and then being like, I got to step away right now. So just think about that whenever you're trying to work through your day. The other note that I wanted to make on the video is she said, take away those unnecessary tasks that staff may have. And I think, and I know I brought this up before, is that whenever you're looking at your, say, a quality improvement plan or something, don't necessarily have to add a new step to your day, but reframe what you're doing in your day. So if you're doing the, when you're doing the rounding, then you do observations if you're auditing something. So just take away one step or take away one piece of your rounding and then add that observation in. Also, if you think back to the cartoon she showed in the very beginning of the video, where they were pulling the wagon with the square wheels, and they just didn't have time to stop and redo it. I think more times than not, folks are set in their ways and don't realize there is an easier way and more efficient way to do something. We just have to stop and look at it again. And then my last comment would be, she had mentioned music as a way to have that pause or that break. Well, you know, if you play music in your office, for instance, and then your favorite song comes on, that's an opportunity for you to have that pause. It's only a few minutes, but it is an opportunity for you just to breathe, relax, try to disconnect, and refocus your energy.
And now we'll hand it over to Michelle to discuss our polls.
Yes, Michelle had to step away for a minute. So Jean, are you on? Jean? Between me and you, I think we can tag team it.
I am on. Well, let me see here. We a few weeks ago, we heard from our colleagues at Missouri Slope. My gosh, I hope I have the right facility.
This is Cheyenne. I think Missouri
Cheyenne Care Center. Okay, we heard about the work that they were doing, and they had submitted a falls root cause analysis. And so today what we're going to do is we're going to listen, or we're going to invite those folks back to go through the PDSA that they developed from their root cause analysis. So, but before we do that, I would just like to point out their aim statement here online. Their aim statement is targeting long-term care residents with the measurable goal of reducing the total number of falls in the facility by 5 by August of 2021. So they're well on their way to that already. And their plan is to have gait belts in every room, a medication assessment on admission, and shift change. And this all was driven by a high number of falls and repeat falls that were occurring. And the anticipated time of their PDSA cycle is to be determined. So before we ask them to speak to the work that they're doing, we just like, next slide, please. We'd like to show everybody again the root cause analysis that they did. And you'll see circled in red that communication at handoffs was one of the key things that they were looking at, and new admissions and readmissions from the hospital. So without any further ado, I'm going to just go ahead and turn it over to our friends from Cheyenne Care Center. Next slide, please.
Okay, this is Rhonda and Amanda from Cheyenne Care Center. And what we did, first of all, when we talked about the communication with it, we did the monitoring of CNA rounding with the shift change. And we also monitored the staff leaving before replacement arrives for rounding, and spend a day of monitoring the time clock station. And we also have our Chronos station that we do to determine who is coming late and things like that. And the prediction is that rounding is not going to be, that our rounding is not being done by facility protocol or expectations. So the other things that we did to address this is we re-educated staff on, well, when we collected our data, we saw that determining if the rounding was corrected or not, our staff, we determined that they weren't doing it correctly. And then the things that we had to put into play, we updated, well, when we did our evaluations of it, and our QA manager went in to assist with the CRA supervisors, and we did it over 1 to 2 weeks for each shift. our data will be followed up for observations, will follow up questioning and education when required based on situation and findings. In staffing needs, form updates, better rounding techniques for shift change, and others based on needs determined during pilot tests. So
Michelle had asked some extra follow-up questions as well. She had asked where we were starting with for our falls. So it was pretty high at 41, and we figure we can hopefully get that down by 5 in August. We did a total of 6 audits on the AM shift, 10 audits on the PM shift, and 9 on the NOC. We did determine that out of all the CNAs, there were 100% not completing the rounds correctly.
some were completing the rounds, some were not. But the ones completing it, even what they were doing was not what we were expecting.
So we have a new goal set for the rounding after this month's education sessions with CNAs and nurses. We're hoping that by next month we can be at least 50% compliance with the rounding. And then by our second month with continued education, 75%. And then within 3 months, we want to be at 100% compliance with shift change rounding.
So with that goal in mind, this is what we did to change things.
We updated our walking around safety checklist that the CNAs take with them, and the 5 Ps are part of what they follow. They talk about the location, the rating, if it was reported to the nurse, last time they were repositioned, how they were repositioned, if they're independent, personal needs, last time they were given fluids and how much, if their cup needs to be refilled, last time toileted, if they're incontinent or continent, last time they ate and how much, personal items, just making sure everything's within reach. And then if it's the end of the shift, they are accounting for the hearing aids and dentures if that's applicable. Prompts, just mainly the fall risk and any interventions that they have to put into place before they leave the room. And then we also included environment, just checking the garbage, linens, hampers, making sure the room's free of clutter. And along with that, we are looking up, updated the policy protocol for the walking rounds and including it in that monthly education as well as huddles.
So that's pretty much what we've done for improving and kind of going on. We haven't implemented, we're going to be starting now to implement the change. We have CNA meetings coming up tomorrow. So we're going to be going over all of this tomorrow. And then in the mornings with huddles, they're going to be going through this. And then we're going to be doing our randomized audits, throughout the week to make sure that they're following up on that. So,
So what kind of feedback have you gotten from the CNAs at this point regarding this very formal rounding process?
well, this is the thing. This is something that they've supposed to have been doing all the time. And the feedback that we got from them was a lot of them didn't know that they were supposed to be doing it, they said. A lot of them said they didn't understand or they were only doing parts of it. There were ones that had been here a long time that said, oh yeah, we know we're supposed to do that, but we don't want it, or it's fizzled out. We just didn't do it. And then there were others who said that they just didn't want to do it. We do struggle with some of the issues of when we have like our staffing issues, because we're such a large facility, we pull from one floor to fill in on the other floor sometimes and back and forth. And a lot of them said that it was very difficult to complete this type of rounding when you're being pulled from one floor to the next, like short notice, or you're only there for a short amount of time. So based off of that feedback from them, we developed a report that the nurses are supposed to give to those CNAs that are pulled. So we'll see. We haven't, like tomorrow we're going to run through and talk about it exactly, hand out the new sheets, make it clear as to this is what's expected of them. They're going to have to do this every time you hand off, do your rounds and everything. And then we'll have to wait and, we'll follow up with them to see what kind of feedback we get, probably in next 1 to 2 weeks to see.
So I have a quick question. Whenever you were talking about staff being pulled from unit to unit, do the CNAs have some sort of CNA care plan, something at a glance they can look at to know, hey, Mrs. Jones, does her bed supposed to be in a low position, or some kind of alerts on their rooms where it's easy to transition between units?
Yeah, what we had implemented a while ago to assist with that, because we do pull and we do use travel, is we've created and keep updated what we call cheat sheets. And that is specifically for people who are pulled from floor to floor. And that's specific to the card that they're working. So they do have that, so they can quickly run through all of that. They also have access on Point Click Care. In Point of Care, they have access to the residents' care plans, their Cardex, all of that. So they do, they have that. So, yep.
Okay.
Also
And
implemented
if I understand correctly, you've just implemented this on one unit, correct? The new rounding sheet?
No, we're going to implement it throughout because of the fact that the polling and it's supposed to have been in place already. We just changed it or whatever. So we decided to do it throughout.
Yeah, the reason I was curious is because, most of the time when we do a PDS cycle, we try to test it or do that pilot in a small area to determine the success and if adaptations need to be made to it before pushing it through the entire facility. But it sounds like you've already got, and I see Jean's question on here too, you've already got some feedback from the staff on how the system works or why they're not using it at least.
Right. So the other, what we anticipate from this is because we do have a Jerry Psych unit and I also have an Alzheimer's unit. So, we'll implement this in those areas, but we are expecting different feedback from each area. So each one of our CRA supervisors that I have designated for those areas will be collecting that feedback in those areas, because we might have to, like you said, anticipate, but to adjust in those areas. One of the reasons why we just didn't want to do it in one small specific area is because one of the things that we've identified here is we hear a lot of feedback from staff is like, oh, they do that on second floor, but we don't have to do it on third floor. So there's always that miscommunication as we don't do it up here, but they do it down there. So that's why we wanted to implement it so it was clear to everybody that this is what we're going to be doing, especially if we pull from floor to floor. We don't, and with our staff demographics, we didn't want to make it a confusion as why we don't understand why we're only doing it here, even though we've tried to explain to them it's a trial or whatever. But because we have done, well, we're going to do it on this floor to see how well it is. And then what happens is they go to another floor. And then when they come back to that floor, they're like, well, nobody else is doing it. So why do we have to do it? So that's why we decided to go throughout the whole building.
I can appreciate your approach to that. I know that we used a similar process in several of the critical access hospitals that I've worked with in the past. And there was a lot of pushback at the onset, especially from the seasoned staff. This was a big change. It seems like a real cumbersome process to follow initially, but I think it's one of these processes that once it's used a few times and everybody is familiar with it, it can become part of what you do on a daily basis very easily. And but you have to work toward that. So don't give up. Keep working at it.
Yeah, and so I did an overnight shift one night with them, and I asked right away to our night shift. I'm like, okay, where's your guys' walking rounds? Are you doing the walking rounds? And they all knew they were supposed to do them. And they're like, oh yeah, that's right. And oh, we'll do them. But I ran, so when I was there, which is key also here, is then they would do them, but they weren't being done to what we were expected. So I think one of the key points is there's going to have to be a lot of, when we're implementing this and making sure that they're doing is there's going to have to be a lot of high visibility from our CRA supervisors and, like our QA and myself and even our nurse managers to make sure and follow up that this is what they're doing, and not just because it always kind of seems like everybody focuses just on the day shift and then they just expect the PMs and the nights to follow through because, well, we work so hard on the day shift. So we have to be present on every shift, not just focus on days. So
Yeah, it takes a strong commitment from leadership, that's for sure.
mhm.
Yeah.
So
So is anybody out there using a process similar to this in your nursing home? And if you are, do you have any feedback or any input on this? Kelly, do you have any further remarks?
No, I think it's a great system that you put in place, and I like that you referenced the 5 Ps, because that's something easy to recall for the staff on the floor whenever they're doing those roundings. Because I mean, I have your rounding sheets over here too that Michelle shared with me. But looking at those, it is a lot of information in one spot. But since it's an easy reference with the 5 Ps, I think it's going to be used, more likely used. Overall, I think this is a great plan. It's a great effort. And it shows that you're making sure that communication between shifts is addressed. Have you seen any kind, just in the short time that you've put this in place, have you seen a decline in your falls yet? If you were looking at it, I'm saying on a weekly basis.
So tomorrow is the day that we're going to actually put it into place after the CNA meetings and everything. So we have not been able to analyze, so
Okay.
we do the CNA meetings tomorrow with all of the education and everything, and then it'll be put into place. So we haven't been able to do that, look at that yet.
Gotcha.
Right.
Well, I'm excited to see how you progress through this. I think it's a great plan.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I think making this part of the orientation process for your new hires is going to be crucial as well.
Yeah, yes, that it is. It is part of that. So, yeah.
No, and I reference this all the time, but if you go back to whenever you're rounding and you're just talking with the staff as you're whoever from the leadership is rounding, they can ask, hey, tell me one thing that you found on your rounds today, opposed to, hey, what did you do your rounds? Because all the CNAs are going to say, yes, of course I did it. That's what I'm supposed to do. But instead of asking that, ask specifically, what did you find in this room? Or do tests to see if they found them. I know when I was in the facility, I used to do call light tests all the time, because how many of you get a million complaints about call light response time? And I would just go in the rooms when I was doing my rounding with the residents and pull the call light. But I mean, you can go into the room and maybe set out some clutter on the floor or something, and then just see if those rounds are being conducted and if they're looking for all of the right things.
Yeah, that's good. We'll try that.
Yeah, I would stay in there till they come in there, because you don't want to put clutter on the floor for somebody to trip and fall. But just to make sure that they're looking for those appropriate things, and then people will get used to you observing that and verifying that it's being done, and be on top of it more.
Right, and that's where I was talking about the presence of the staff out, of the CRA supervisors and the nurse managers, and myself too, to be present out on there, and they will understand that this is what they're looking for. So we're hoping that will help with compliance.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And showing them those things as you're going through it. Little test trials. Hey, I'm going to come around with you today during your handoff, and just make sure that they're looking at all of those items that they should be looking for, just as a friendly reminder. And even if you have, say, a champion on each shift, that can be the go-to person, the CNA champion, the go-to person about what rounding should look like. And pairing those folks up for new hires with them.
Yeah, it is, you know, and we do have 2-3 champions that we do have, and you know, and we struggle with staffing, you know, as I'm sure everybody else does, but you know, we're going to give it a shot. So
Well, I think you have a great tool.
Absolutely.
thank you.
We appreciate your sharing. There don't appear to be any questions in chat, and nobody has unmuted their line or said anything. So I think we can move on to the next, unless Kelly, you have further comments. Okay.
Jean, I think one just popped up as you said there's no, no question.
Is this taking the place of another task? Asking because of the earlier topic today to not give one more thing. How is this balanced?
It isn't really taking the place. I mean, I don't know how to, it's not, we're not taking the place of anything. It's something that we have to do. It's going to be extra work for people until it gets into place. So you know, for us to try, you know, to put one more thing, and it is going to have to be one more thing that we have to put on the plate of everybody. But in the long run, I think it would decrease the stress if we get this in place and we decrease our rate of falls. It's going to take a lot of things away, because right now with our high rate of falls, we do a lot of, you know, root cause analysis, and we have meetings, and it takes a long time for that. And that does get to be, you know, a lot of stress, and, you know, dealing with the families and the nurses having to do that. So initially, it's probably going to take a lot to get it into place to hopefully decrease our falls, which then will decrease the burden on our staff. So.
Absolutely. And Rhonda, if I'm not mistaken, in the very beginning, you had mentioned that this is something that everyone should have been doing anyway, but they just weren't doing it correctly, or they had just kind of checked it off that they didn't need to do it anymore. So this is making it a little more structured maybe than what they had before.
Yeah, it is something that we've always it's been expected, you know, but sometimes with all things that if we just expect they're going to do it and there wasn't any follow-up, it does have a tendency to fizzle out, or they just go quick and not do it correctly. So, but yeah, so it isn't anything new, but it is something that does need to be more structured.
Yeah. And I don't know if you guys recall when we were in phase 1 and we watched the Quappy video about the CNA knowing that Mr. Jones, or the housekeeper knowing whatever his name was, fell, he was in the lobby, he liked to watch the birds, so on and so forth, and how the CNAs can be involved in Quappy efforts, because then in essence, that's going to save them time when that family member comes and says, oh, don't forget, mom's bed's supposed to be low because she's had falls. That CNA would know that on the top of their mind because they had just done the rounds. Oh yes, I've already put their bed low. And it really saves the CNA that effort, rather than having that angry family member, like, why did I walk in and mom's bed's raised up high? And they're going to be upset with their CNA and then the charge nurse and so on and so forth. But if the CNAs are looking at these things daily whenever they're rounding at those handoffs, then they can have that conversation with that family member. It would be quick, brief, and hopefully pleasant. And then that would save time there as well, and decrease the amount of stress that you have. I think that whenever we look at reframing the things that we were doing to make it more efficient, in the long run, it really does make a difference. Sometimes it's hard for them to see whenever it's like, oh, one more thing I got to do. But when you make something more efficient and make sure that everyone is informed of what's going on with the resident, it saves time in the end.
Yeah, it does. Right. Well, I agree with Mary Lou. She says great PDSA. This next slide is Ava Maria's restlessness interventions that were discussed on last week's call. They very nicely sent this entire list to us. And I believe that the hard copy or the electronic copy has also been sent to the Sarah, so it should be posted on the geriatric website soon. But I just want to comment again that their work on root cause analysis with this individual was exemplary, and that this is truly how you individualize your interventions to fit a patient who's a high fall risk. And we appreciate the information that they shared with us last week, and again, sharing the interventions with us. Next slide, please.
Jean, do you know anything about the new funding available for the music and memory program?
No, I do not.
Okay, well, we'll get that from Michelle and make sure that that gets sent out to everybody. So
I will say that in the past, the CMP funds have provided funding for music and memory. And if you are unfamiliar with how to apply for CMP funds, if you go on the CMS website and search CMPRP or CMP, it should give you the applications to apply, and it would go through your state specific, and then it goes through an approval process, and then you get the funds. I'm just saying that off the top of my head. I'm not sure if that's what Michelle is referencing, but I know that CMP funds were a way to get music and memory funding in the past.
And finally, we have WSHIC's falls intervention document that they shared with us. I took time to go through this and compare and contrast to some Hospital Improvement Innovation Network information that was shared with me. I think that the information was from the Stryker Corporation, and I was impressed with how comprehensive WSHIC's falls interventions are. This document, I believe, there's a link that will also be posted out on the geriatric website, so you can see the whole thing, and it may have been sent as an attachment. Sarah, was it?
Casey?
not yet, but I'll send it out to everyone as well.
Okay, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, and I just want to comment on the work that WSHIC has done again. This is truly one of the most comprehensive documents around falls interventions that I've ever seen, and aligns with all of the evidence-based practices that are available, and different resources that are out.
I have to say, this first one under confusion, I think it's great. I don't think we see that far enough about reorienting people to their surroundings, especially those new admissions. They've been, I mean, just imagine they've been at home, and then they're in the hospital, and then they're coming to you, and they're already probably high anxiety from moving around so much, and then in a new place that's uncomfortable, unfamiliar. And I think that's a great intervention to list and be familiar with. And maybe when you do that immediate needs care plan, whenever they're admitted, then you include that on there. Hey, don't forget to reorient them every time you go in to see them for the first 72 hours or whatever.
So I see Leanne has asked how many places still use alarms. And I asked Michelle the very same question just a couple days ago when we were going through this information, and she said that most facilities are not using them. If they're using an alarm system, they're using something that is audible only through their walkies, so it's not disruptive to everybody. But it looks to me like the response is that most facilities are alarm free. Kelly, do you have any comments on that?
No, I saw somebody put we went alarm free in 2016. I feel like it was around that time when I was still in the facility too, that it was, I mean, it was the huge push. Hey, we're getting rid of all of them and we're getting rid of them now. And it was a trial and error to start weaning folks off of them, and especially making sure that the families understood the need to get rid of them and how they could be more harm than good. So I think it's great that people are making those strides.